It's not just about the affair, it's about the lies and power imbalance, and Ian Lees-Galloway had to go. That's according to former National Party MP Chester Borrows. The Minister for Workplace Relations and Safety, Immigration and ACC was sacked after admitting an extramarital affair with someone who worked in one of the departments he headed. Jacinda Ardern said he'd lost her confidence and he'd opened himself up to accusations of improperly using his office, and his position as a minister was untenable. The revelations came to light after a third party, not the woman involved in the affair, emailed National leader Judith Collins about the allegations. A former minister in the National government, Chester Borrows, says it's hard to trust a minister who's been caught out lying.
The Prime Minister's made it clear that it's not just the fact that he was having an affair, but obviously the position he held was workplace relations and health and safety and those sorts of things, and actually interoffice relationships, power inequities in relationships has been in the news for the last few years. Think of the law firms, the Defence Force, those sorts of things.
In your view, did he have to go as a minister?
It is a question of integrity for a minister, and the public will be thinking, well, if he's prepared to lie to his wife, he'll lie to us. So it is about the integrity of the cabinet, and that's what obviously Prime Minister Ardern was thinking of.
She spoke a lot about the fact that this woman was connected to an agency that was associated with his workplace portfolio. So I suppose that begs the question, would it have made any difference if he was having an affair with someone who was associated with his ACC portfolio or immigration? Or is it just that he's a minister and he's having an extramarital affair with a worker?
I think the power imbalance is the biggest thing. I don't think the portfolio is necessarily as important as that, although the specifics around the health and safety and workplace relations ministerial portfolio is significant in this case.
How does it compromise him as a minister?
It compromises him in terms of his integrity, in that it is an affair that's going on alongside being in a married relationship. Now, people will say that's a moral question, but when it comes to whether you can trust what people say or what they do, it's inconsistent with somebody who is supposed to be able to be held to account and told the truth to the public.
Chester, does this not raise an enormous dilemma then? Because if it's one of telling the truth, I mean, how many other MPs in Parliament are lying about extramarital affairs? And should they be under scrutiny?
Well, they are under scrutiny, obviously, and that's the whole issue you've got here. In that, you think about recruiting future members of Parliament or candidates to stand in seats, and now there are a number of seats where there's going to be a rushed recruiting and selection process. And when you have that rush, then you tend to get lower calibre candidates. So, the fact is really that anyone thinking about being an MP better be very careful that the terms in which they broke up with their girlfriends going back better have been good and not going to come out and bite them, because all of a sudden they're vulnerable to that. Anyone who's had some stray one-night stand after an office party and then seeks to go to Parliament, be an MP, and then gains profile as a minister is vulnerable to attack. And this could come back and bite them years after the event, and not necessarily from the person they had the liaison with, but other people who knew.
Is that fair scrutiny though, Chester?
Well, I don't know how much of us could bear a real intense level of scrutiny around everything we do in our private lives. Nevertheless, that's where we've got to, and it's what people will take into account. And then you end up with the people who have been thinking about going to Parliament for a very long time, made preparations around being in the best place to do that, and been thinking when they've, been on a night out on the terps or the tiles, that actually I do have this ambition down the track and I've got to be really careful, I best go home now, they're the people who don't tend to stuff up down the track when they get to Parliament. And a lot of people who go to Parliament have never lived under this level of scrutiny.
So you've been in Parliament. How common are affairs in this environment?
Well, actually, to be honest, I didn't, and I better be after all what I've just been saying, I didn't find that there was a large number of these affairs going on in Parliament, or as many as I thought there would be. bearing in mind that nowadays MPs are a hell of a lot busier than they ever were. They're expected to cram a lot more into a week than previously, because in the past, under the old regime, MPs were away for home for longer, Parliament sat more hours, but nowadays MPs are expected to work right through until 10, not just in the chamber but in their offices preparing for other meetings, and actually holding meetings right up till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So I think that the opportunities are less. There's certainly a lot less drinking going on than there used to be back in the day from all reports, and you can see that in the amenities that are around Parliament and the way that they're frequented. So I think it's less than there was back in the day, but it's still, it occurs. And it's, I guess, Lisa, it's not surprising. You've got a whole lot of sort of type A competitive people who are conscious of image and the rest of it. And so they, these things tend to come out in those sorts of circumstances. If you look at other areas of employment where you've got high levels of competition, testosterone, type A people, then there tends to be these sorts of goings on.
Chester, assuming a sexual relationship is a consensual one, when should, that part of your private life, your sex life, determine whether you are fit to be an MP or not?
Well, I think there is an issue when people are maintaining multiple relationships at the same time, because invariably it involves deceit. Now, the public apply that level of deceit to the portfolios that people are carrying on their behalf as ministers of the Crown. So there'd be a major inconsistency of a minister of the Crown carrying on multiple relationships and that involve deceit, for instance, to a partner, and then say that when they're standing in front of the microphone and representing the public of New Zealand as a minister of the Crown, that there's no deceit. And I've seen situations where people have gone into Parliament where they're not used to ever having to consult anybody at all about their behaviour or anything else, and then they end up falling foul of the whips, they fall foul of their colleagues, they let people down and all the rest of it. If that's the way they conduct their life before they go to Parliament, that's the way they'll do it when they're in Parliament, and that's when they'll get into trouble.
And that's former National MP and Minister Chester Borrows.